Hi everyone, let's talk about Arkham Horror Second Edition. I've just finished a whole series of this game. If you'd like to check it out, it's linked in the description. You'll see the game in action. This is just me talking about it if you are interested in what I think about the game. This is perhaps going to devolve into a big tangent of me and my kind of gaming history with Arkham Horror especially, but I'll say up front as a brief summary, there is so much strange or frustrating or wrong with Arkham Horror Second Edition. There are so many reasons that I could choose not to play this game for kind of setup time, for play time. Sometimes it can be ridiculously quick. Sometimes it can be obscenely long. There's a ton of, look, hey, that's a good time for that to come up. There's so much luck involved in terms of luck of the draw, the dice, and all of that stuff. Not that it's random whether you win or not. There's a load of strategy and stuff that the players need to do. There are things that were definitely smoothed out, clunky things that were definitely improved in things like Eldritch Horror. But for everything that I can kind of complain about, I think Arkham Horror Second Edition is still the best example of the world of the kind of story adventure game of this kind of epic co-op. The Arkham Horror does not care about you. It does not care if you want to try and win. Good luck. It will do its best to try and crush your dreams and hopefully tell a fun and funny and engaging story whilst doing so. But yeah, for every reason that I shouldn't like it, it just works so beautifully. And yeah, part of that is absolutely nostalgia. Fully prepared to accept that, but I think it's absolutely amazing. And yeah, I've had it kind of with a bit of a gap. I've had it for about 15 years, and yeah, it's done me incredibly well over the many times that I've played this game. Mainly, I've only recently, after I filmed this playthrough, I've only recently ever played an expansion. So everything I'm saying pretty much is for the base game. So I first got this in about 2008, and I've been trying to rack my brains of how did I ever come across this game? And it's basically the first game that I ever bought that we could kind of consider these modern, lovely board games was World of Warcraft, the board game, because at the time it was in the brief period, the 6-month window where me and my friends were really obsessed with World of Warcraft and played that loads. So there's a board game. I used to like board games. I've still got the Supermarket Sweep, the Crystal Maze board games. Hey, maybe this is going to be amazing. I really enjoyed it. I don't remember too much about it now. I have got it back though. Maybe we'll play through that one day. I haven't played it yet. It can be really disappointing. But I realised when getting it back, we were looking through the Fantasy Flight Games spring catalogue of 2005. So thinking there was a board game shop local to me, which I'm still gutted isn't there anymore, and walked in there to get World of Warcraft, the board game. Huge, expensive. Walked into a room full of board games, never thought about any of the others that were in there at all. But it's in this spring catalogue that it's talking about things like Fury of Dracula, Warrior Knights, Doom, Twilight Imperium. There is a page in there, of course, for Arkham Horror, because 2005 is also the release of the new Arkham Horror. The town of Arkham, Massachusetts is in panic. Horrific and bizarre events have begun to occur with increasing frequency, all seeming to point towards some cataclysmic event in the near future that may spell disaster for everyone. Only one small band of investigators can save Arkham from the great old ones and destruction. It was this that kind of turned me onto it and made me think that sounds really interesting. I've not heard anything like this before. And I think looking it up on the internet, maybe going into the shop to actually look at the game proper, it was the game bragging about. It seemed bragging about how you were going to lose this, how you shouldn't really think about how you were going to try and win this game. You were going to lose it, but what can you do in the meantime? The world is going to end. This great big ancient one is coming to destroy it in some way. You will probably fail to stop it, and if it wakes up, you will probably fail to fight it. But have fun despite that. That really appealed to me, and it still does appeal to me. So yeah, over the years, I played it tons and tons and tons. It only kind of went away in the kind of explosion of Euro games that I got. Kind of that initial period where I was just buying everything and trying to get all of the games. An impossible job, but You got to try it. That's kind of like, well, I've got all of this stuff that I want to play. I've got all of this stuff that I'm learning. We're playing Arkham Horror, like, still all of the time. Let's put that in the cupboard. Let's put that away a bit and play all of this stuff. And yeah, it ended up kind of being years like that. The drive kind of came from picking Eldritch Horror up on a whim at the UK Games Expo, the bring and buy, and getting into that and absolutely loving it. That kind of coming back to original Arkham Horror. I love Eldritch in so many ways, and yeah, it does a better job of being kind of adventurous and swashbuckling, giving you more hope, giving you more chances to succeed in it, being maybe a bit sillier in general. And yeah, it smooths out a lot of stuff in the kind of gameplay and setup and all sorts of stuff. You can mix all of the expansions together and it isn't really a problem. But it is Arkham Horror that goes for the kind of... It has an atmosphere that is also present in the others, in the third edition, in the card game. I don't think anything really nails it like Arkham Horror. Like, they're not always going for you just roaming around the town, but for kind of bringing this town to life. All of its various locations. Not that you go into a lot of the safe locations a lot of the time. You go into the places with clues and gates and stuff. They have a kind of unfair advantage of having encounters there. Sometimes the encounter is just fight a monster, good luck. You skip your next turn. Sometimes it is that more kind of perhaps old school game design. But it tells such interesting stories. The basic thing is just we are roaming around this town desperately trying to get ready for the ancient one that we are fighting. But there is so much in it as well. Like, you can say that about a lot of them as well. But there is so much. Like, it's like 12 characters. There's a ton of ancient ones. There's like 7 cards for each of the locations, but there's a ton of different coloured locations that you can have things. There's a ridiculous stack of Mythos cards. You get one at the end of every round. There's a ridiculous number of gate cards as well. Like, it's kind of more refined, it's more tuned when you're doing gates and stuff in like Eldritch Horror, perhaps. But yeah, there is just something about the way that this is written. And that kind of, the game doesn't always feel hopeless. And certainly, like, now we're playing it, I have won a lot more than I feel like I used to. I'm hopefully better at things than maybe I used to be. But there is this lovely loop of it as well, that the gates are opening thick and fast. It can be happening every single round. If you're not shutting those gates, they will come out again and monsters will burst out of them. More and more and more monsters. They will start to overwhelm Arkham. If you can't keep a lid on those monsters, they will start to go in the outskirts. You've got a limit on how many can be there as well. So when the monsters overrun the outskirts, they all disappear, but the terror level increases 1 step. There are only 10 steps on it. Every time a step increases, one of your potential allies, there are not many potential ones, one of your potential allies flees Arkham in fear. And as we start to reach these milestones on the terror track, the locations start to close. People shut up shop and start to leave Arkham as they see the writing on the wall. The general store, the magic shop, they all start to become inaccessible for the rest of the game as well. And eventually, well, if you manage to reach terror level 10, the monster limit is removed from Arkham and it just overruns the place. Because you have to evade or you have to fight the monsters that you encounter. As they start to move around, as they start to kind of overwhelm the streets, it becomes this lovely puzzle of how to get where you need to go. Who is the right person to do this? What can we get? How much time can I waste trying to build up the character when all of this is overwhelming us? How do I navigate this stuff? Because yeah, maybe I can evade that monster. If I fail to evade it though, it hits me and then I've got to fight it anyway. I can't take that hit. Maybe I just need to fight it. If I fight it though, we're in the streets and I get no encounters in the streets. I've got to waste my whole turn fighting this thing. I want a cool story. So that's the kind of main drive for it as well. Like, the world is ending, but maybe I could become the deputy of Arkham. That would be fun. Maybe I could get a membership to the Silver Twilight Lodge and start having different encounters. There is that pull of it as well that is beautiful. Like, the expansions start to introduce like missions you can go on as well for enticing rewards. But there are so many things outside of the main gameplay thing that is happening that is lovely in itself. that it's just like, I want to have encounters. I want to have these story moments every turn as well. I want to see how this can go. I do want to build up and have impressive things for helping us to succeed at the game, maybe helping us fight the Ancient One if that happens, although generally, I'm sure better players than me will say that they're a doddle, but generally, it's lost once it gets to the point of the Ancient One waking up. Still always have the fight because it's funny, but yeah, you're generally going to lose that fight, I feel. It depends on the Ancient One though. At this point, there are so many of them. I really like the focus system, the way that the skills work in this game as well. It is unwieldy and takes time, and you don't really know what you should be doing. You don't really know which stat you're going to need on your turn. You'll end up boosting something and then drawing a random encounter card, and oh, I need to test the skill that I've just turned down thinking I might need this skill. You don't necessarily know which skills are going to be tested in the encounters, but yeah, the having the limited focus, you've got like 2 focus, which means you can move these sliders 2 spaces in total, and they're paired up so that, you know, if you want more speed, you're going to have less sneak. You know, makes sense, right? And it makes the characters more dynamic as well. They're still unique in that, you know, they've got different pairings, they've got different maximums and minimums of the various numbers, but it does help to make them a bit more kind of variable, a bit more maybe dynamic. Did I already say dynamic? But yeah, at this point, I have got, like, I dropped on an auction about a year ago for, like, it was just basically looked like a box full of cards for Arkham. It was like Arkham plus expansions. Don't know how many, don't know which ones. At this point, I've got it all. And I haven't played all of it yet, of course. It seems like you can't really mix it all together. Like, you can for, like, investigators, play all them. Ancient Ones, there is a ridiculously thick stack of them at this point. I think there's like 48 investigators in it, a ridiculous amount of Ancient Ones, so many encounters across all of these different expansions. It seems like I've been playing, there's a great set on Board Game Geek of introductory scenarios that kind of introduce bits of the expansions. So I've played a few of them. I've played the King in Yellow just because I really love that theme. I really want to finish. We started the Pax Carcosa in the... Is it Carcosa? No, I can't remember. The King in Yellow one of the card game. We ended up abandoning it because we picked the wrong characters. After, I think, like, the 4th scenario in when we were getting smashed, we were like, should we just end this and pick some different characters next time because this is miserable. We've gone wrong. But yeah, I really love that story. So I played a bit of the King in Yellow expansion, and then there was one where it had the Dunwich board. The first time I've ever played with an extra board. I used to see these expansions and not be able to afford them, and then by the time I could afford them, they were way out of print and ridiculously expensive. So really kind of glad, really lucky that I managed to drop on a kind of bundle. They do come up every now and then as well. Like, that's the thing, that I wanted to make a video of the game just as it is, with no expansions, because at this point, I see them come up on Facebook and eBay all the time for not that much. It seems like they go for like an open one, sometimes, you know, a bit of a worn box. It seems like they go for about £25, like, pretty regularly. I'm not saying all the time. The price might go up by the time you watch this in the future, but I think it was a popular enough game that there are a lot of copies of the base game out there. Some of the expansions, not that hard to get as well. Some very expensive and hard to get. So I wanted to make a video of just the base game, so you can see that there is a lot in here, and the core of the game is in here. They're just in this base box. You don't need any expansions to make it what it is. Of course, those expansions are going to add more things, like the ones for Eldritch did. You know, more encounters, more items, more options, more mechanics as well. That you can become the member of a gang, you can become the member of a cult in various things. There's a great thing in the King in Yellow where there is a charity performance of the King in Yellow that is being rehearsed, and as the game advances, every now and then this act will advance, and if they ever complete the play, the world will end because of that. Yeah, there's just some beautiful thematic things in here, and I've only really scratched the surface of them, but just in terms of this base game, there is a lot of nostalgia involved. I understand that because, yeah, this is kind of way before I ever got into games. When did we get into games? Like 2014, 2013 maybe? So this was like 5 years before that. I really wonder why I went into a game shop multiple times and never thought, what are all of these lining the walls? I just got those two, never went back in again until many years later. But yeah, I'm glad that I went in and grabbed this because yeah, there have been plenty of times where I've just played it 4-player, loads of 2-player, plenty of solo. I think there was like, was it like 8 players? I think it goes up to 8 players, maybe even more. But there was a ridiculous kind of all-day session of a great big 8-player game of it. It was very loose and took forever, of course, but it was a hilarious kind of shambles of trying to save the world. And often it is in Arkham Horror as well. Yeah, there are so many things that maybe feel a bit old-fashioned. It takes forever to set up, it takes forever to tear down, especially if you're including expansions in all of that. Sometimes it's just really easy and you just breeze through it just because the way things lined up. Hey, I'm speaking of the base game rather than expansions as well. Hey, here's an encounter that gives you an elder sign. Have a random unique item. Oh, it's an elder sign. Okay, well, there's some gates sealed. That location keeps coming out, and no gates start opening in it. Hey, we just breeze through. We've closed them all and got enough trophies. Brilliant. Sometimes it's just so unfair, and stuff is just like spiraling. You are slowly spiraling down the drain for like an hour or more. You're still having adventures and stuff in there. You've got to kind of accept that winning and losing is kind of secondary. I said this in the Fortune and Glory as well, that it's nice to win, but the main thing is kind of this wild story that is happening around us. And yeah, these kind of story-based games, they are story-based, but I'm not talking in kind of, you know, we're coming up with a story or it's got a storybook involved. These kind of emergent storytelling games, it's got these little elements, it's got these few sentences strung together that you are all randomly experiencing at the same time, coupled with the monsters you're fighting, the things that you have, the character that you're portraying. I feel like the stories are, I'm not putting down the stories that are in the card game or any of the other editions, but I feel like the character stories, there is something about the ones in second edition, and some of them have been harrowing as well. I feel like a bit more extreme than they've maybe gotten a little bit less horror in revisions of them. But yeah, they have kind of more flavour than any, and I really like the way that they're done in those other games as well. The personal stories that you can get in one of the expansions as well, that kind of give you an extra bit of flavour text and a kind of thing to go for short term to get a benefit, and do it before this time, otherwise you get a penalty. They are great additions as well. There are kind of some things that seem to be seen as essentials in some of the expansions, like Dunwich Horror adds these madness and injury cards. So usually when you run out of health, you lose a load of items, go back to the hospital with 1 health, and hopefully you'll have some money and then you can pay to get full health again. There are injury cards instead in the expansion. So instead of losing anything, you can choose to take an injury card, but that's going to be a permanent thing that's going to be bad for the rest of the game. So you have to weigh up what do you want to do in that. And I think if you get identical ones, then you die. Yeah, there's so much. Like, we played a game last week with the one with the Dunwich expansion. Like, I've only played, I think, 2 games with expansions turned on so far. But yeah, we played a game where, what were we against? Yog-Sothoth, I think, where if an investigator is ever lost in time and space, they are devoured. We were playing 2 characters each, me and Rach, and I think she lost, was it 3 investigators died from being lost in time and space? It was just a conveyor belt of, I think Monterey Jack lasted ages, which was pretty sad when he went, but after that it was just 2 turns of someone and then they were lost in time and space and gone. Like, if you were just playing those characters and trying to build up, frustrating. It eases it a bit playing 2 each, and if you play 2 characters each, it's a bit longer, but you get loads more encounters between you as well, and it feels a bit easier, especially when you've got another board to contend with. It feels easier getting around. Like, that's the kind of thing in this, and even in Eldritch has got that issue, that even though stuff is balanced, you know, the limits, the things that are coming out are changed based on the number of players, there is still a great big map to get around. And, you know, something's happening at one end, something's happening at the other end. You're just 1 or 2 people trying to do all of that. It's going to be easier with more people, even with the kind of things making it harder. Just having more people in more places makes it feel like a bit more of an even experience, it feels like. As you might have seen from the times that these pop up sporadically every few months or so in the last year, or from the ridiculous amount of stuff that I've got on here, like, oh, you've got painted minis and stuff? Hey, they're mostly from Mansions of Madness. some of them. Yeah, I've gone down a great big rabbit hole, first of all, of just like Eldritch Horror and stuff, and the various Arkham files, and it's spreading to other things like wanting to experience stuff like Fortune and Glory, which has paid off beautifully. Hey, I'd like to hear about more games you like in this kind of avenue. Not so much like the setting in particular. I know there's a billion Cthulhu-y things around, but in this kind of cooperative storytelling, just funny kind of mode that these games are in, that Arkham Horror, Fortune and Glory, Agents of Smirch, doing it in very different ways, but yeah, just have a great time with that kind of thing, as well as, yeah, I just feel like it's opened up an extra thing of that I always used to like, that never really turned off, like competitive, especially take thatty games that we tried initially. Yeah, I'm not interested in those still whatsoever. But yeah, it feels like a lovely kind of fresh extra thing on top of all of the lovely medium cube pushing Euro-y things that I love so dearly as well. Yeah, it's just lovely coming home to Arkham. I love it more than ever, if possible. And yeah, I really want to experience what's going on in all of these expansions and things, because yeah, it's the kind of only one that I haven't played a ton since, you know, playing loads of Eldritch and Mansions of Madness and the card game and stuff. Yeah, it's I think it's still my favourite, even though it could point to things that Eldritch does better and smoother, and yeah, that was a better choice. The feel, the atmosphere, the nostalgia of Arkham Horror just works perfectly for me, I think. But hey, the playthrough is there, as well as this great big, it's turned into a bit of a rambling epic, this video, and sorry about that. The playthrough is there if you would like to see Arkham Horror in action. Hopefully you've already seen that at this point. Hey, here's some story that might tempt you. Tom Mountain Murphy's coming in it. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. There is more on the channel if you would like to see more. You can support me on Patreon or Ko-fi. The links to those are in the description, and it's how I'm able to make any of this stuff in the first place. Thank you so much for your support, everyone. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you for the next game. Bye.